Pirates learn all the tricks, dirty politics. Caesar to Charlemagne, Stalin to Tricky Dick. Pirate learn all the tricks, dirty politics. Yes, pirate learn all the dirty tricks, dirty politics.
Hey, what's up, everybody? What is it? Tuesday night, going on Wednesday morning. Your old pal Pirate here. Charging the car. The heart of Oakland, California. A couple nights ago, I had my car almost carjacked twice in one night. So yeah, Oakland, California. We're going bankrupt as a city, they say. So I don't know. See what happens when all that shakes out. But hey, I got some time on my hands, and I was going to watch a video, so I figured I'd hop on here and watch it with y'all, watch it with the world. Um, gonna be doing this, semi-frequently, I guess. I've, get a little laughs in there. I don't know about the rest of y'all, but since the election, what's been tickling my funny bone, is just watching a lot of these, progressive news channels with their autopsies and their, uh, they're trying to figure out what happened with the election there. Try to figure out what's going on with their own party. And as an outsider, hey, it's fun to watch them pontificate and squirm and yet realize nothing at all night after night. It's the purest form of entertainment I got going on right now. So if you're like-minded, let's watch some progressives try to figure out what's going on with the Democratic Party. I got a video queued up here. It's from the
when I say that people are unserious,
from the Bulwark. Let me pause that. So yeah, the Bulwark's a channel I've been checking out the last couple of weeks. It's again, from my end, it's funny. So if you find it informative, God bless you. It's just a pretty basic progressive, lefty news channel. I think they market themselves kind of like center left, but they're varying degrees from left to pseudo socialist. I believe this guy is. He seems to be on even the farther left end of the channel. I think they call him JVL. He's like the editor of the Bulwark. They call him the editor of the Bulwark, so I guess maybe they have some kind of print form I'm not aware of. But so this should be fun. This is an episode of a show they got called The Focus Room, I think, or maybe it's just The Focus. Maybe it's The Focus Group. It's essentially they're going over focus groups. I think this episode is swing voters who swung from Biden in 2020 to Trump in 2024. So it's going to be this dude here and the host, Sarah Longwell, I think her name is. I've seen each of them a couple times. He seems, he's pretty much a dyed in the blue socialist type. She seems a little bit more reasonable, like she's definitely full on progressive, but yeah, she's the kind of person seems like you could sit down and at least have a conversation about things. I don't think I agree with her on much, but at least empathetic enough of the human condition. Whereas this guy here, he thinks anyone who's to the right of him, he just has absolutely no idea how your brain could function and not be a full-on socialist. So, as tends to be the case with, when you find these socialist guys up in age, once you get past like 35 or so, 35 or 40, and you're still like full-on leftyville, I mean, it's hard coming back from that, at that point. At that point, you're pretty much set in your ways. So, yeah, let's check it out. There we go.
I think the answer to that is then that, well, you've got to court them in unserious ways. You need your own demagogue. You need a candidate who is going to like love to go on Joe Rogan and is going to nod and wink with the flat earthers. And
no, you don't.
Yeah, I think you do.
Absolutely not.
So again, here's at least looks like a 50-year-old man, a political commentator. He's supposed to give you the insight that you can't get on your own as an ordinary person, right? And God, just the lack of self-awareness is absolutely insane. Yeah, go after those flat earthers. That's definitely what won the election. America is a nation of flat earthers now. But keep in mind with this video, these people they're listening to, they voted for Biden just 4 years ago. And actually, I think they got a lot of interesting things to say in this focus group if you're willing to listen. But this guy, he's definitely tuned to hear what he wants to hear. Man, he don't like them much at all.
Welcome to the Focus Group Podcast. I'm Sarah Longwell, publisher of The Bulwark, and this week we are continuing our autopsy of the 2024 election results. We've got several angles on this election that we didn't get to last week. Even though Ested Herndon and I talked for 90 minutes, we only got through about half the sound. So we've still got Kamala Harris's inexorable ties to Joe Biden, the culture war, and why abortion didn't seem to be the decisive issue it was in 2022.
And with the abortion, I mean, I think that was a huge misstep by the Democrats. They thought this abortion thing could carry. Look, I'm sorry, I hate to break it to you. We're America. 350 million people. We're the big, really the only superpower in the world. Abortion is a thing. Abortion is not the only thing. Abortion is, if you go in thinking who should lead America, the superpower of the country, of the world, and your number one issue is abortion, I'm sorry. They're a bigger fish to fry. And it's, it got kicked down to the states. So it got kicked down to the states. All of the states are handling it, the way they want to. A lot of the red states have passed allowances on abortion. Most of America is somewhere in the middle. Most of America does not want a complete abolition of abortion, nor do they want you to be able to get abortion up until the moment before birth. Most of America is somewhere in the middle. Most of the states are, coming around to that and passing laws. So no, as far as voting in the president of the United States, abortion is not the number one issue. The Democrats made a huge mistake thinking that it would be.
Swear we're going to do a show about what people found appealing about Donald Trump, but not today. So we're taking this particular struggle session in-house. I'm excited to welcome back to the show, almost against my will, my best friend, Jonathan V. Last, editor of The Bulwark and my co-host on the Secret Podcast and The Next Level. Welcome, JVL.
Sarah, I'm so glad that you were forced into having me for this.
The people want this content, unfortunately.
They do.
Yeah. So, thanks for coming back, buddy. So, all right. I want to talk about the takes you've been putting out about these voters in a little bit, because you've got lots of takes about the voters, but I actually made you listen to some for real. So just for the moment, why don't you paint me a picture of your mental state after listening to these groups?
Well, I mean, I always try to come on this show with a sort of a big picture theme. And uh, I have some small, there are like three things that I think are small bore that are worth talking about because they're persistent things that came up in these groups over and over again. One of which was people not liking Kamala Harris running on abortion. Another of which is that they really didn't. I mean, a bunch of people talked over and over again about not liking the fact that she wasn't nominated through a primary process.
Gee, who would have thunk? Your party comes out and says that Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. If he wins, democracy in America is dead forever. The fascist takeover is here. The name of your political party is the Democratic Party, and yet your presidential nominee, there's zero democratic process whatsoever implemented in choosing her as the candidate. She's thrust onto the population. If I was a Democrat, I would have such a bug up my ass over that. But these people, so many of them are so stuck in spin mode, they never take 5 seconds to sit back and think about the real life ramifications of some of these. So yeah, I'm sorry if you're surprised that it maybe turned some people off, that you just thrust probably the least likable politician in America at the time down their throats and said, "This is your nominee." Hey man, smell the coffee.
Another thing, I'm sorry, 4 things, not 3. Another was a lot of RFK love.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of RFK love.
Yes.
And this is interesting to me because that's clearly a subset. There isn't a lot of RFK love in the voting public. And we know this because he was polling at 2%.
Okay, well, I was never an RFK guy, but I know he was polling at higher than 2%, especially before he dropped. He might have been polling at 2% after he dropped out and said, take my name off of all the ballots. But I know he was up there in that 7 to 8% range easily before Biden dropped out when he was actually running for president. So I don't know where he got this 2% figure from.
And yet, all of a sudden, these people are very RFK curious. But and then the final thing here, surprisingly, people in these focus groups mentioned immigration sometimes, not seem to have been an important driver, and they did not seem to have specifics. Like immigration was just sort of thrown in as an afterthought. It wasn't well, we got to do X, Y, and Z about immigration. It was just like, yeah, that's one of the other things I'm unhappy about.
Again, for whatever reason, just this guy's coping. For some reason, it seemed obvious. I knew immigration was one of, if not the top issue from the moment that Biden came into office. If you've been looking at just the polls on immigration for the last 4 years, I mean, none of this would be a surprise, but for the Democrats really want to downplay the immigration thing. They refuse to acknowledge where the country is actually at. It's quite obvious that Donald Trump was elected president twice because immigration was one of, if not the top issues both times. So I mean, this is kind of ridiculous. A week or two after it happens again, still looking for some data, sifting through the data, searching for data that might explain that people don't care about immigration. It's quite obvious that they do and have for a long time, for the last 8 years minimum. For a lot of people longer than that, but the last 8 years, the majority of the country, that's one of the top issues.
Mm-hmm. And so those are the four small bore things that stuck out to me listening to these three groups. The big overarching theme is that this is an unserious country filled with unserious people. And we will get into that over the course of the specific sound, but the extent to which these people are utterly unserious about government, America, themselves, their lives, it was shocking to me. And I don't easily shock on this stuff with the people.
Well, let's
Well, so I mean, you can see this guy's basic personality type is kind of smarmy jackass. And once a reminder, these focus groups are people who voted for Biden last election. Now they've switched to Trump. I'm sure this guy is more than happy enough to take the unserious people voting for Biden. If you put a room of 18-year-old kids rah-rahing for the Democratic Party, you ask them any question on anything, and they can't go any deeper than a 5-second um, uh, Pavlovian response. He's more than happy to take the unserious voters. Reminder: this is the party that depends on the 18-year-old vote. This party depends on sending the nation's kids to liberal public school teachers and rushing them into the voting booth when they're 18 years old to vote Democrat, just as they've been taught. But now he's coming to the conclusion that he's just now realizing that that the country's filled with unserious people, and that's his shtick for this show: unserious people. And I'll grant it, yeah, the country is full of a lot of unserious people. But from these focus groups, the indictments that he makes over 5 to 10 second sound bites that are actually really reasonable for the most part. It's it's just kind of sad that he can't open his ears for more than 5 or 10 seconds to listen to what people actually think or thought about this election.
That's just for so people can understand this sort of, as you note, this 2%. I mean, RFK, depending on the state, was polling some places better than others. 2% might be a little low, but I do think that in the small percentage of people for whom RFK was very relevant, it is probably overrepresented in people who went from Biden to Trump, which is who we talked to,
That's a good
right?
point.
So in these groups, you're talking about people who have previously in their lives really voted for Democrats, who now, not always, but because we didn't do, it was Biden to Trump, so we didn't always go back. But in a lot of cases, the individual voters, as I was listening to them, like they also voted for Hillary Clinton, and sort of were like casual Democrats. And so you can see how an Elon and a Tulsi and an RFK especially made people like them seeing those people welcomed into Trump's orbit, how it had a sort of a real effect on these types of voters making their sort of late-ish decisions. I'll also say we got into this in the Ested thing about one of the things that I think wasn't exactly a blind spot, because we certainly talked to voters like this the whole way through. But because strategically I focused much more on the college educated suburban voters who had gone from Trump to Biden, I do think that there ended up being just in the voting population more of these types of voters who were sort of not committed Democrats at all, but sort of typically vote Democrats, who are more low information, more just general election voters, not people who follow politics closely, who they were the late breaking independents, who really, Kamala Harris held steady with our kinds of people. It's basically the only group she didn't lose ground with was our people. And by our people, I mean these sort of Trump to Biden voters who consider themselves kind of center right. Like she had college educated suburban voters. She did fine with them. She stuck. She did a little bit better in some places and otherwise held steady.
One thing I'll say, and you'll see this like throughout this video and pretty much every progressive channel, the way they are so fixated on demographics and groups man, woman, black, white, college educated, not college educated. It's just so inauthentic, and personally, I think it's a huge reason why they're losing ground. I mean, now people have different intuitions. Maybe you lean more conservative or lean more, lean more progressive, but the Republican message is just to Americans: stop. Now, this is our platform. This is what we believe in. This is for America and all the Americans. As opposed to, you got the Democrats running around here, and they're so caught up in their focus groups and their tailored messages to each individual group. They've got a dozen messages for what they say when they're in a crowd of black people, what they say when they're in a crowd of college educated suburban women. None of it's authentic. It's all just tailored. All right, what are three talking points that this demographic 60% of this demographic support, and we'll go in and we'll say we're for that. It comes off fake. It is fake. Um, there are a lot of stupid people out there, but not that stupid. All right, I mean, it's pretty easy to tell when someone's fake. During the course of an election cycle, where day after day you see the fake message being wheeled out day after day. So, man, if I were the Democrats, I'd maybe try to step away from some of these focus groups and these polls and try to figure out what you actually stand for. And and maybe grow some cojones and go out and stand for something. Win or lose, you might as well